You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Citizen Detective, and Campus Killings. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
On June 3rd, 2023, Marcos Perez and his family went fishing in the Jemez Mountains. If you're not familiar with New Mexico, Jemez is a beautiful part of the state. It's just about an hour outside of the Albuquerque metro area, and people go there for hot springs, camping, hiking, fishing. It's really an incredible part of the state. So it's no surprise that Marcos, who's described as an avid fisherman and outdoorsman, would want to spend a beautiful summer day out there in the wilderness. When the family returned back home, Marcos decided that he wanted to go to a party with his best friend, Nick Ortega. So the boys decided to head out to this house party. Everything seemed fine. Marcos' mother checked in with him, and he said that everything was good. And sometime before 12 a.m. on the night of June 3rd, gunshots were fired, and Marcos and Nick were left dead. This is a little bit of a different episode because both of these young men were killed at the same time. So in this episode, I'm going to be speaking with both Marcos's and Nick's mothers to get their side of the story and to learn about what happened with the murders in their families. Stay tuned for the end of the episode where you learn about what you can do to help the families of Marcos Perez and Nick Ortega as they fight for justice for their loved ones. I'm Eric Cater-Landin, and this is The Murder in My Family. Welcome to The Murder in My Family. Today, it's going to be a little bit different. I actually have two guests who are here to talk about two separate victims and two murders that happened at the same time. And so I'm going to ask you ladies to introduce yourself for our audience. I'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I am Marcos Perez's mom.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm Nicholas Ortega's mom.
Welcome to The Murder in My Family. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for sharing your son's stories. Can you tell my listeners about Marcos?
So Marcos was a very loving young man. Big heart, huge heart. Had a smile that brightened up any room. Always the jokester. Just a great person that was taken way too soon.
Can you share a little bit about Marcos's interests, the things that he was into, the things that he liked, the things that made him smile?
Marcos was a mama's boy. He was always with me. If he wasn't with me, he was at work. He loved work. He would get so upset if somebody called off because he took his job so serious. He loved fishing. He would go to the Rio Grande just to fish, to the ditch. Him being outdoors, that's where Marcos loved to be. He was an outdoors kid. He was a gamer. He would stay on the game all night till 2 a.m. All I heard was them yelling back and forth. He was a gamer. I miss that. I miss that smile that I would always walk into. I worked graveyards. He was always kissing me on my forehead, telling me, "Good morning, beautiful." He was just like a loving kid. And I'm not saying that because he was a mama's boy, but every person he met, he left an impression on them.
Tell me about Nick.
Nicholas was my youngest son, my youngest child. He had 4 older sisters. He was very loving, and him being the youngest, he was the most protective youngest brother. He protected everybody he loved. He was the type of kid who would give his shirt off his back to his friends. He would let people stay with us when they didn't have a place to stay. I don't know, he's just very loving and very protective over me. He was an uncle. He loved his nieces and nephews. He also, growing up, he loved to dance. That was like his thing. He was in lots of things. He was in karate and soccer, Boy Scouts. And then in high school, he was in football. He was a kid who kept to himself. But when he let you in and he just let you in, he said he would take care of you like no other. And once you were in that, then it didn't matter. He protected all his friends.
Am I to assume that Nick and Marcos were friends?
They're best friends.
Can you talk a little bit about their relationship?
I'll let you.
I have 3 kids all together, all boys. They were always to themselves. They were each other's friends. My son went to the twins. Marcos was a twin. He went to Del Norte. He met Nick. Man, did Nick come into our lives at the perfect time for Marcos, man. This kid Nick instantly became family. Him and Marcos were together every day. They would go fishing. I got both of them. I was already on Marcos's Live 360 because I'm just that crazy mom. But Nick got put on my Live 360, so I was like, oh, it's official. We're in. But they just had an awesome relationship. Nick came, like I said, he came in the hardest time of Marcos's life that he was dealing with. There before Marcos and Nick started hanging out, Marcos was very depressed and always quiet and to himself. And Nick came in and it was just smiles and gaming and fishing and we're going to go camping here. They just had all these plans, but they were the best of friends. Where you see Marcos, you see Nick. You heard Marcos, you heard Nick. Like they were just, even if they're gaming together, they were on. If they weren't gaming, they're FaceTiming each other. They were the best as friends. And when we first met Nick had told, because the twin brother was, who's this kid hanging out with my brother? And Nick told him, I got you and your brother. I got you. And Nick stood by. He never left Marcos or Luciano's side.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that it's really beautiful that they had each other and that you all had each other and that they had each other's backs. I think that's a beautiful friendship. And I know it's painful to talk about what's been lost, but I also think that it's beautiful to honor what these 2 boys had with each other and with your families. So thank you for sharing that. I know it's not easy. Okay, so now it's going to get harder, and I'm sorry in advance, but we can pause as much as we need to. If you need to cry or whatever, just take your time. But let's talk about the events that led up to that party and then what happened at the party from what you know, and whoever wants to take it.
So it was a Saturday. We actually went to Jemez to go fishing. Nick was supposed to go with us. I don't know what happened, but it was me and Marcos and his stepdad and stepbrothers. We ended up going fishing. He told me he was going to a graduation party, his girlfriend's cousin's graduation party. The kids had a curfew. They had to be in by 11. That night, I told them they can stay out till 1. We got home from Jemez. He took a nap. Him and his girlfriend, Nick came over. Him and his girlfriend and Nick, they all got ready. And I wasn't even, Marcos and Nick aren't problem kids. So I wasn't concerned. They're like kids who don't like conflict. They don't like any problem. So I wasn't worried. When they left that night, I was waiting for my phone looking at them. I just texted him at 11:45. Are you good? And he says, I'm good. I love you, Mom. And then 15 minutes later, I get a call of his girlfriend screaming. And she's just, Marcos been shot. Marcos been shot. Right away, just ran out the door. On my Live 360, I put, take me to him. I was one of the first ones on the scene after the cops. There were still cops showing up after me. I remember running. Where's Marcos? Where's Marcos? Screaming, where's my son? Somebody told me he was shot. And I was like, I started screaming for Nick. Where's Nick? Where's Nick? And a girl ran past me and she said he was shot too. I was just screaming. I remember trying to run through the police to get to the house, to get to my boys. Like, I just talked to Marcos. He just texted me. That night was just so chaotic. I remember getting a hold of Danielle and having to tell her that her son was shot and I needed her to get down here. It was the hardest thing. Her son was at my house with my son. I felt like it was my responsibility to make sure he got home. So, like, when I found out I lost both of them, my world came crumbling down. That night, I remember, like, kids were still running from the house. And this kid, me, I'm just like, what's going on? What happened? And there was this one name that was keep on getting thrown out there from day one from the incident. When I arrived, kids were naming Nate. First, they said Nate Garcia. They said he goes by Zay the Plug. His name's Nate Garcia. That name started going around. We find out the kid's name is Nate Gonzalez. This kid was named from day one. This was fresh on these kids' minds that were running. There was 35 kids in that home. 35 kids. All the girls that were running out. It was Nate. It was Nate. Who is this kid? And why is his name being brought up from day one? His name is still in there. Nothing's changed. But it breaks my heart because I count the days I don't see them. It's been 375 days since I've seen either Nick or Marcos. We still have no answers. I still have no answers from day one. I got kids' names. The kids are saying names. The kids, if they're not going to the detectives and saying what, it's hard. At this point, I want answers. I want answers for my boys. If that means I have to rattle some cages, shake whatever tree I need to and see what falls down. As a mom, I'm going to do that. I lost 2 pure souls. Great kids. Wasn't in the streets. Wasn't in the system. I want my kids, the boys, to be another statistic. I don't want them to be forgotten.
They won't be forgotten. I think that the more that you advocate for them, the more that you are out there telling their story, they won't be forgotten. It's not going to happen. And I know I've seen my own mom go through it, right? I know what a mom will do in this situation. And my heart breaks for you too, but I also want you both to know that you're not alone. And I think you know that. There's a whole community of people, unfortunately, here that are dealing with the same thing. And I know it doesn't make it better and it doesn't bring them back, but I hope that there's some comfort and peace in knowing that you're not alone. And I know that all of my listeners are going to be invested in helping and watching what's going on with this case. Is this anything that you want to add?
So on that day, Nicholas came up to me and said he was going to go with Marcos to a party. And I gave him a look because me and him have talked about that because of the other incidents in Albuquerque. I moved to Blinn to get him away from Albuquerque. And he knew how I felt. He's, I don't want to go, Mom, but I have to go because I have to go and be there for Marcos. And I understood that because he was a loyal kid and protective and whatever. I didn't know exactly what kind of party it was he was going to. I didn't feel okay with it, but he was 19. I couldn't be like, no, you can't go. And I got the call from Vanessa. I think she left a message on my phone. I saw it and I was scared to answer it because it was her. And I just knew something, right? And then I called her back and she told me what happened. And I didn't even wake up my husband. I went and knocked on my daughter's door and I said, I need you to get up. I said, we gotta go. And we started driving to Albuquerque and I'm looking on 360 to see where exactly he was at. He put me on 360. I think he tracked me more than I looked at his because he's normally always home or at work or fishing. But when I got there, I just kept saying no. He they made a mistake. It's not him. He's going to pop out from the bushes, or it couldn't be him. And when I talked to the officers, they were like, we can't say who it is yet. And I just remember like dropping to my knees and praying that it wasn't him and that it was going to be okay. And my other daughter, I had to tell my youngest daughter, she had to be the one to call his dad, who lived in Texas, and the older sisters to tell them, because at that point we're just hoping he was okay and whatever. So when I got there, it was a little bit quieter. It wasn't, besides like, us crying and trying to, I was trying to stay calm at that point when my daughters were there, and just trying to be strong, thinking like, it's not him, like nothing happened, like this isn't right. And then I remember the detective calling Vanessa and having Vanessa go in the car and talk to her, and then he pulled me in there and just asked me about, I guess, to verify it was my son, and then basically asked us to leave so it wouldn't get any worse. And I remember leaving, going home, and just thinking I should have stopped. And I still feel like it's partly my fault because I let him go.
I know that whatever I say isn't going to ease your guilt, but I assure you that you are not responsible for this. The only person responsible for this is the one that pulled that trigger. Anything that you found out later that you didn't know that day?
There's a lot of things that have been said since then. There's a lot of, so kids were saying that Nathaniel Gonzalez is a shooter. They mentioned two other kids that we heard different stories. First, we heard that Nate was shooting and recording him shooting our kids. Then we heard that his friend Caden Chavez was recording Nate shooting our kids. Which they told us that it was over when everything happened. The detectives came to my home the next day and said that it was over a liquor bottle, that they were fighting over a liquor bottle. So when I'm hearing this, it just blows my mind, because that's not who Marcos and Nick are. They're not those kids. Hearing that the detective says that Jordan pushed Marcos, pulled out his gun while my son was on the floor, and started shooting.
They said it was over a girl at one point, which I knew wasn't true because my son wouldn't fight over a girl. Only one girl who wasn't there, and Marcos had a girlfriend. So we already knew that wasn't true. But there's multiple stories. There are stories that Nicholas got between the boys. I was trying to de-escalate it, and I'm just like, Nicholas, if anything, got between them to protect Marcos.
There's just a lot of things that have been going back and forth. They said that Marcos had a gun in his pocket. Then they came back and said that a gun was stolen. We know 2 guns were stolen because the witness across the street, when she heard the gunshots, she ran across the street, her and her husband. Her husband said they seen 3 boys run out, and he asked if they're good, and one of the kids said, yeah, and just took off. While the wife went in, checked to see if anybody had a pulse. She said a kid ran back in and took a gun, asking for Jordan's gun. So we still don't know what happened that night. Like, it's still everybody's he said, she says. The detectives, don't want to confirm all the stories. They had pulled us in. We had a meeting, and they had made a statement. If Jordan was alive, he would be charged with Marcos's murder. I told the detective, so you're telling me if Jordan was alive, he would be in jail for Marcos's murder. So that's telling me that he's the one that shot my kid.
I don't know if it's just a New Mexico thing. I've definitely experienced it in New Mexico, like the gossip chain and people just throwing things out there. It happens in almost every case where there's a lot of witnesses. So it's not unusual. But a couple of things that I want to highlight as we go into the next part of this conversation is I hate to say this, but this is a normal thing that happens in Albuquerque. Parties get shot up a lot. And oftentimes it's young people. And it's just really frustrating is not even the word. It's a huge, almost like an epidemic, because I've had multiple families that I've talked to in New Mexico that have faced the same thing that you guys are going through. And it's a huge problem, and nobody wants to deal with it. Nobody wants to address it. We've got legislators here that are not dealing with this issue. We've got law enforcement. We've got district attorneys, all of these people who are seeing this happen in front of them over and over again, and it doesn't change. So I can't imagine the frustration that you guys are experiencing. Well, I can imagine it because I'm experiencing frustration related to a case as well. But can you talk a little bit about what's been going on? What are the things that, because here we are 375 days later. So this happened in June of 2023. There's still not an arrest. There's still not any prosecution brought forward. There's still, it seems like for a minute they were investigating, but now based on what we talked about earlier, it seems like things have slowed down a lot. So can you just share a little bit about the investigation from that day forward?
I want answers. I want answers. I would call the detectives constantly. There came a point where Curtis wouldn't take my calls. He would just have his sergeant call me. Sergeant Fox, he was really helpful, and I guess he got demoted, so another sergeant came on. And, you know, just, I feel like when you become in a position where you're serving the community, they need to understand how these parents or these victims' families feel, instead of just brushing it off like it's nothing. With Sergeant Fox, I was getting meetings, he was pushing for me. This new sergeant is just, he had made a comment because I told him it's been a year already. How come I haven't heard anything? He made a comment saying it can take 3 years for ballistics. And I said, so you're telling me that you're going to wait? So nobody's pushing it? You guys have a person of interest. You guys have all this evidence, but you're telling me you're going to wait until ballistics? If it was your child, and I just throw it back at him, if it was your child or your family member, I'm pretty sure you would be pulling some strings. I had told him, give me the phone number. I should be able to call them. I will call them every day to hound them to see where my boys' ballistics are at. It's just been a constant, I feel like they're playing us, me and Danielle. They tell me one thing, and then they go and tell her another. I think they fail to realize that we talk to each other and we put everything that they're saying together. That we put it together. They had called Danielle in. It was June 3rd, actually. It was the day of, they passed away June 4th, midnight. But the day of our kids, like they called Danielle in and they tell her that they're going to give the case to the DA. They didn't call me in because they said I was threatening to, I wasn't at that meeting. Immediately when I was aware, I called the sergeant. I called Terry, the victim liaison. It's nice that they have them, but honestly, they're just the cover-ups for the detectives. I don't want to talk to them. You never have nothing for me. Honestly, I feel bad for you because the detectives put you guys in these situations where you're getting yelled at every day.
So I want to go back to something you just said, because I think it's important to clarify what was meant by when you said you threatened them, or they said that you threatened them. I just want to make it clear for everybody listening that we're not talking about like physical violence or anything like that. Can you just share a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, I threatened to go to the media to bring news attention. I had threatened to take the news in front of their building. They didn't like that. They called on the 3rd, when they called Danielle in, they told her they were giving it to the DA because she was doing a podcast with you. When I told the sergeant that this is normal for them, they'd say this to families every day. So when I addressed the sergeant, he was like it was nothing. Oh, we can't have her go to the media. We're still investigating. What are you investigating? You have not gave us any information. Now you're trying to say you're hearing other stories. It just, like I told Detective Curtis, I know who my son was. I know who his friend was. Like, you're not going to sit here and tell me that my kids were the aggressor. I know Marcos hated yelling. He hated conflict. That was a big reason why he didn't hang out with his two brothers. He was a quiet, shy person, as well as Nick. I'm not going to say that they didn't have their social media and because they're typical teenagers. I don't know what my son does on social. I don't know any of my kids do on social media. I don't have social media for one. When that's a big thing that I have to remind the detectives. I don't care what the social media says. Go around and ask people, do they have a record? Were they selling drugs? Were they causing harm to the community? Every kid in not just New Mexico, everywhere. It's happening everywhere. This is the new norm for our kids. They want to make a name out for themselves out in the streets. I'm not saying it's any excuse, but at the end of the day, they're still kids. Their mind has not fully developed until they are 28.
Yeah, it's got to be frustrating to not have answers. I know that sometimes investigations can take a long time. And I know that sometimes evidence does take a long time to get processed, especially with the number of cases that are happening here. But I do think that there needs to be more, I don't even know how to put this. I feel like in this state in particular, that the suspects have more rights than the victims and their families. And I feel like it supersedes where the families and the victims fall, and the families and the victims get left behind in this situation. And I know that it's frustrating to go through this. I can't pretend to know what a detective's day is like in Albuquerque. I don't know. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know what kind of pressure they're under. But I do think that there should be more communication, more understanding, more empathy coming from that side of things. And not just the police, also from the district attorney and from the attorney general and the entire state. Really, I feel like victims and their families, they get re-victimized by the system, by the process. And it becomes even more unbearable to get through that part of it. And it's almost worse. Not to say that it's worse than the murder, but it makes it worse sometimes, I think. Is there anything, Danielle, that you want to add to that part of it?
My biggest thing is after the incident, I don't remember who it was, but they went on TV and basically said that the case was closed, and it's put on their website, but our detective and stuff said it was still open. And I feel like that was wrong because that's like basically, how do I put it? I don't even know. They said it was closed and it wasn't. Another thing is, so they interviewed a lot of the kids after it happened. And then recently they re-interviewed them and all their stories have changed. And basically making out that it was our boys the second time. And I had to point out to the detective, my son knew nobody there except for Marcos and his girlfriend. Marcos, I don't think he knew anybody there, so they were all friends. Of course, almost a year later, they've all talked, I'm sure. Of course, the story's going to change. They say they understand that, but nothing's been done. The one boy who they wanted for questioning, he actually lawyered up, so they didn't talk to him. And now I guess we're hearing that he said something about soft defense, which makes no sense because we as the moms, we've seen all my reports, which I'm sure the detectives seen, so I don't understand why they think I wouldn't understand it. Because as moms, we protect our kids and we're going to do our own investigation. Basically, if we don't know it, we're going to learn it. We're going to do whatever we have to do. A lot of the information the detective got was from one of my daughters. She actually reached out to a lot of the kids and got more information than the detective. Right now, I don't even trust the police because they told me that it was going to the DA's office and they told her it wasn't. So basically they lied to me. So I wouldn't speak out. And the first time we actually did something was actually for your walk. And that's how we met. And after that, we did a few other walks that me and my daughters had put together and we did them. And we met a lot of other families. But they also said that there was a video of the one kid going up to my son and after he was already down and shooting. And because there was multiple gunshots, not just like one, it just blows my mind that they're like, oh, they want to believe that it was soft defense when There's literally gunpowder on my son's back.
Yeah, I think that's important to call out here. So what that indicates is that he was shot from behind. And I don't know how you could claim self-defense when you are literally behind somebody and you shoot them. That doesn't make any sense. It's also quite common for people's memory to not be as good as it is when, like, after things have happened. And so if you're talking to somebody several months after an incident, it doesn't surprise me that their story's changed. I'm not saying that there isn't some kind of like collusion and people talking to each other or whatever, but I think it is common for people's memories to not be as good as they are when you first talk to somebody. So I think it's interesting that they re-interviewed everybody. That makes me wonder why, like what led them to having to ask questions so many months after the fact. Did they give you any indication on any of that?
So I think it was after the fact that they put the Crime Stoppers thing for questioning for Nate is when they started re-interviewing, because while they were trying to find him at first and then how he lawyered up, but that's when that all took place. And it's just, they said they didn't talk to him or whatever, but then I'm just like, how are you saying that he's saying it's self-defense? I guess maybe the lawyer told him, the detectives, I'm not sure, and maybe that's why they're doing it. But those are like the questions, is you tell us one thing and then it's totally different, or to the point that we started recording when we talked to the detectives because they would backpedal a lot. They would change the stories to what they would tell me, what they would tell Vanessa, what they told my ex-husband, what they told my daughter. Like, the stories never were consistent. So it's just hard for me to put trust in the police. And I've never been one of those people. Like, I have family who are officers and I respect that. I know it's not easy. I know our detective has multiple cases and I totally get that. But to the point where they need help from outside, from somebody else coming in and helping, because it's not like it's lightening up. Like, these murders are, they're getting bigger. And if we don't have enough police to actually finish a case, because they're on another case and another case, and how it just makes me wonder how they could even keep them together or keep them separate. Because me, as a normal person, I can't even imagine. And I know their job is hard, but it just seems to me like it makes it even harder that they have so many cases. Their caseload is like way overloaded, and we've heard that from them. And I don't know if it was the liaison or whatever told me, you got to understand they're working on other cases too. And I understand, but that doesn't make it like my son's case and Marcos's case doesn't matter. Those are our kids, and we're going to bug and we're going to do whatever we have to do to get justice for our boys. They didn't deserve this. And like the aftermath, like our families are like destroyed. Like, me even coming to Albuquerque it gives me anxiety. Not only how dangerous it's become, because I was born and raised here, but knowing that I might bump into those kids and we know what they look like and how you would react or if you would say something. And I'm pretty calm, so I don't know. But like other people, like my other kids, what if they all know what these kids look like? Every kid who was involved, we have seen pictures. But to know that they're just on the street and like nothing, and like our boys' lives didn't matter, and what happens if they do it again? Because nobody's taking it serious. The one kid whose name was brought up 100 times the night it happened, they didn't even question him for the longest time. They questioned the other kids. These boys who ran out the house, they actually threatened one of the neighbors that they would come back and do something. Yeah.
So the cops are wanting, APD wants to put it out there that the community is safe, but how is that safe when these kids not only killed 2 kids and possibly 3, because there's rumors out there saying that he shot his friend. So we don't know. Everything is, they're not taking this serious. Yes, we lost our boys, but there was another kid that lost his life as well. I feel like they should take this case serious because these were three young kids that lost their life. And unfortunately, they see this every day, right? It's their job. In a way, I want to say they signed up for it when they knew what field they were getting into. But I don't know. I just keep on wanting to bring up the new sergeant had made a comment saying I should be glad my kids have a detective on their case because he has 6 new cases that don't have detectives on their case. And my comment is you're proud of that? Ask for help. We have New Mexico State Police. Take some pride in what you do. Take some pride in it.
Or set your pride aside.
Or put it aside and reach for that help, because this is constantly. You turn on the news, you see a new killing. You see a new shooting. And sadly, it's young kids between ages of 18 to 21. You can go online and get a gun. Within 5 minutes, somebody will meet up and willing to sell a gun. Like, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, it just keeps happening. So I know that it's been over a year now, and I know that it's been not moving forward in the way that you want it to be moving forward. I know that this has been an emotional conversation, and I want to thank you for sharing your story and sharing the beautiful lives of your sons that were tragically stolen from you. One of the big things that I like to focus on my show is engaging the audience and trying to see how they can help support families that are out there looking for answers and looking for justice. If you can talk about what my audience can do to help support the Justice for Nick and Marcos campaign.
Basically, just if you know something, say something, call Crime Stoppers,
Follow the Instagram and Facebook, Justice for Marcos and Nick.
and just get their names out there and try to help us get justice for our boys.
And there is going to be a petition that these 2 lovely moms are going to put together. We'll put the link in the show notes below just to try to get that added pressure on the case so law enforcement knows that people are watching and that people are listening to the story and that they cannot sweep this under the rug. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but sometimes that pressure does help to get things moving. Anything else that you ladies want to say as we wrap up this episode?
Just thank you for listening, and please help us share our story of our boys.
Thank you both for coming on, and justice for Nick and Marcos.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder in My Family, and I hope that you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.